All right, everybody. We're going to continue today's discussion looking from when Bitcoin goes multi-chain to why Bitcoin yields matter now more than ever. And again, this is very important and relevant to the last conversation about Bitcoin going multi-chain as well. I know this panel is going to be a ton of fun because behind us in the green room, these guys have been chatting, laughing, and conspiring about what they're going to talk about here on stage, and it sounds like it's going to be a great epic conversation as well. If you haven't done so already, again, lay of the land. We are here on the main stage, conversations all day. To your right, my left, we do have the technical silent disco stage with technical discussions all day. Upstairs, we've got plenty of room for everyone to talk, along with snacks, coffee, and much more to come. That said, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome up a big round of applause for this next panel to talk about why Bitcoin yields matter more now than ever. Please welcome up the panel's moderator, Gav of Wolf Financial.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all. As you mentioned, my name's Gav Blaxberg from Wolf Financial. I'm super excited to be moderating this panel. If anyone's unfamiliar with ZIRP, that's the zero interest rate phenomenon that hit us a few years ago and really turned the entire market, both traditional and crypto, on its head. We've, of course, moved out of that. Interest rates have risen, but things have kept on going, and the waves have been felt, especially in the world of Bitcoin yields. So today I've got an all-star panel. We're gonna run through some quick introductions and then we're gonna get into the good stuff. Let's start out with Philip from Stacking DAO, if you wanna give a quick intro.
Hey, what's up, Nashville? Happy to be here. I'm a co-founder and core contributor at both Arkadiko and Stacking DAO. Arkadiko was in fact the first DeFi protocol to launch on Stacks. It's a crypto-backed stablecoin. And Stacking DAO is the first and leading LST, so that stands for liquid staking token, liquid stacking, you should say, on the stacks. We have over $100 million in TVL. We're alive and kicking, growing every week. We delegate to throughout all of the signer network. I'll talk a bit more about that, but yeah, that's me. Happy to be here.
Beautiful. Brian is an OG in the crypto world. Super excited to have him up here, VP of BD at Thesis. Please, a quick intro.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Brian Mahoney. I'm co-founder of Acre, which is a Bitcoin staking project by Thesis, which is a Bitcoin venture studio. It's our newest project. We just launched on mainnet today, actually. So I'll be talking a bit about how we differ and do Bitcoin staking right in the space.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brian. We've also got Tycho on stage, co-founder at Zest Protocol. Super excited to have you. Also a major contributor to Stacking DAO. We got some connections on stage. Brief intro, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here and great to chat Bitcoin yield today. But so I'm co-founder of Zest Protocol, which is a lending protocol built for Bitcoin. Currently live with a lending market on the Stacks L2, which is like the second largest protocol on Stacks in terms of TVL. And then also contributed to Stacking DAO, which is the largest protocol on Stacks right now in terms of TVL. And very excited to share more about the upcoming Zest Protocol Bitcoin yield product, which is going to be very exciting and bring yielding BTC to Stacks.
Mystery. I love it. Very fun. And of course, Peter, super excited to have you on stage, the smooth-looking CMO over at Velar. Give us a brief intro.
I think Brits get bullied here, don't they? That's how it works. Peter Watson, CMO of Velar. So we're a Bitcoin DeFi protocol. We've got a DEX based on Stacks right now, and we've got our launchpad coming real soon. But most importantly, we've got the world's first perp DEX on Bitcoin about to go live. Currently on testnet on Bob and BitLayer, waiting for the Nakamoto for Stacks. But the most important thing for me when it comes to building on Bitcoin is perps. I'm a trader at large, love a bit of trading. So as soon as the team were announcing the perps, it was all in from me.
Beautiful. Quick round of applause for awesome speakers. We're going to get into the good stuff here. I'm going to kick it off with Brian over here. I want to talk about the Bitcoin economy and how that's progressed over the past year. To be honest, a great year. I think Bitcoin's up over 100% past year. and what projects you're most excited about when you look at it.
Well, price aside, which I know we're all watching that very closely, this year's been a bit of a renaissance for Bitcoin. Obviously, the Bitcoin ETF has marked a mainstream moment. Adoption, especially in the US, in particular, Western markets showing more adoption for Bitcoin generally, more acceptance in the mainstream sentiment. But what I'm personally excited about is, this is the first time I've been in this space since 2016, building mostly at the intersection of CeFi, DeFi with the focus on Bitcoin. And this is the first time I've really seen a full boomerang back to Bitcoin builders from a talent and capital perspective. Talent in particular is particularly exciting, which for me, we have the engineers coming back, excited about this movement, really kicked off with the Ordinals movement and Bitcoin NFTs last year. So that's continued to accelerate. And now people are more open-minded. You have this void in the market in a post-FTX world for earning or stacking stacks, earning yield on your Bitcoin assets. And I think we're sort of at the cusp of a revolution here in terms of how people think about Bitcoin and putting capital to work on chain.
Beautiful. We are getting the good stuff here. I want to bring it right over to Tycho. Let's hear a little bit about Zest protocol and how are you going to generate Bitcoin yield?
Absolutely. And I think the interesting sort of title of this panel is after ZIRP, right? After zero interest rate policy. I feel on Bitcoin we've had zero interest rate policy for the last 15 years, right? There hasn't really been an easy sort of risk-free way to generate yield on BTC that also contributes to the Bitcoin network, right? I mean, we saw the big CeFi companies, right, attracting all this BTC and then taking way too much risk because there was not really any transparency into how the yield was generated, and more and more risk was taken, and everything blew up, right? But to have this kind of infrastructure for Bitcoin is absolutely critical, right? We need lending markets to kind of kickstart finance, right? We currently have digital property, but to do finance with the hardest assets in the world is still extremely difficult right now. And that's basically what we seek to unlock with Zest protocol. And going to initially start with generating yield on BTC using staking of BTC, which is news. So we will share more about that in the coming month, and as well as lending to make Bitcoin markets more liquid.
I agree with you. Absolutely, this is a cornerstone of Bitcoin, right? That ability for people to get financing and to continue to build upon it. Money does make the world go round in some way, shape, or form. But it's also important to remember that yield and financing can also have items like equality and freedom built into it, right? This is the idea behind Bitcoin. It's a global market. It's powering freedom and equality. I really want to hear a little bit from yourself, Peter, about that topic. How do yields factor into freedom and equality in a global market?
Yeah, so I guess it's quite a complex question, right? But in reality, I mean, the most important thing about Bitcoin is freedom. Freedom of expression, freedom of money, freedom of choice. So when it comes to kind of focusing on that kind of key area, one of the biggest issues within the financial institutions right now across the board is there's mass inequality across the globe. So someone in America, for example, gets much preferable rates than someone in Nigeria, for example. And one of the great things about Bitcoin DeFi is it allows individuals to have one set, one level, one base rate of yield or APY they can generate at a complete fair market distributed way that's never been done before in history. And we've seen it happen on, shit chains like Ethereum and Solana and stuff. And now what we're seeing is it's all coming to Bitcoin. The hardest, strongest, best project's ever been built in humanity. So for me and for the team at Velar, we're all Bitcoin builders. We fundamentally believe in this stuff. We're from the community, and we're literally building for the community. And I think the biggest issue right now is this inequality within kind of financial markets. And when you're looking at where the yield and where use cases are most utilized within the crypto ecosystem, it's perps, right? So perps allow individuals to be able to focus on getting the best yield within the ecosystem, which is why Velar is focused on building the world's first perp DEX on Bitcoin. And that's what we're driving for the next quarter.
Wow, world's first perpetual Bitcoin. I'm excited for this to keep coming because I completely agree with you, right? When people have access to financing like that, it's changing economies at scale across the entire world. Let me throw one more question real quick about yield, and then I want to dive a little bit deeper, and that's for yourself, right? Involved with multiple protocols, DAOs here. How are you working on generating that yield?
Yeah, I think all three gave really interesting perspectives already. So not gonna comment too much about that. I just want to say, Tycho, I really agree on what you said about just that the world needs some kind of healthy level of leverage. So I think all three guests or speakers, whatever, they're building phenomenal products, and I'm happy to be next to them. But so specifically about stacking DAO, for instance, we actually build on top of what I often call the best kept secret of Stacks. So Stacks is the leading Bitcoin layer 2, I should say.
Indeed.
And proof of transfer, for those who haven't heard of proof of transfer, it is the consensus mechanism of Stacks. And that generates Bitcoin yield. And so if you use stacking DAO, you have some idle stacks in your wallet, just go to our website, you deposit them in there, and you earn Bitcoin yield. However, we do something better with that yield. We turn that Bitcoin yield into STX. And awesome. So Lior, who's here in the audience, he's done, raise your hand, Lior. Yeah, he's done some awesome research on that, how stacking that specifically can outperform just simple Bitcoin yields in a bull market. And so if you're interested in that, come speak to either me or Lior about that. But so if you have stacks, you can deposit them in stacking DAO, get your LST, use that throughout DeFi like Zest, like Velar. And yeah, play around with it, stack stacks. Earn Bitcoin yield, or stacks yield, I should say, which is a little bit like Bitcoin yield on steroids, I have to call it. And yeah, have some fun on chain, do some awesome stuff. And yeah, Bitcoin yield, who doesn't like that, right?
It seems like a no-brainer, right, at the moment. But let's talk about it for a second, Brian, because despite the fact that you look at this and say a lot of things make sense, there's a healthy skepticism that runs across the ecosystem, right? People have been burned on yield-focused products over the last few years. What do you think has changed, and what makes this safer than what people have been burned by?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to my point earlier on just in living in a post-FTX world, you know, the mainstream public has woken up to the issues with black box, you know, yield models and credit risk, centralized custody, right? People are more aware than ever in terms of, you know, wanting transparency and wanting that full on-chain experience. On-chain activities increasing across the board, you know, not just for Bitcoin, but other protocols as well, shitcoin protocols like Peter was referencing. But in general, I think the real use case here is, and where we're focused on at Acre, is unlocking native Bitcoin yield. So we're more building on the, we'll call it, I don't want to call it necessarily the risk-free rate, because nothing is risk-free, but that is ultimately our North Star, is being as transparent as possible and unlocking a fully on-chain native Bitcoin yield so you can grow Bitcoin on Bitcoin in a one-click experience. So I think there's also a void in the market, and why the consumers historically have flocked to centralized exchanges in the past, or centralized yield platforms like a Celsius or a BlockFi, is because the user experience is killer, right? But the trade-offs are for those is they have a black box, you know, centralized model behind the scenes, right? And so if you can combine a killer UX with an on-chain experience, that's a winning play in our view. And so that's what we're trying to achieve at Acre, is this sort of one-click Bitcoin yield experience that doesn't require you to download any shitcoin wallet or anything like that. You just use Bitcoin one click, and then the yield and does everything for you. And if you want to go deep under the hood and follow the flow of funds, you can do that. But otherwise, you just sit there and earn passively. And of course, we have some fun yield farming games on top and other things as well. But those are for the more savvy sort of degen type users.
Let me follow that up with a question to yourself, Tycho. What do you think are the biggest risks that people have to be aware of in this ecosystem as they go about it?
Yeah, I think if you want to generate yield on BTC fully on chain, then that, like in almost every case, that involves moving the BTC to either another protocol or to another layer, right? So it's a little bit different than, say, generating yield on ETH, where you can keep the ETH on Ethereum L1 and it's sort of always there, and then take that yield generating risk, right? So there's like an additional layer of moving the BTC to a programmable environment, be it like a protocol that runs on Bitcoin L1 or a Bitcoin L2, and then engaging in yield generating activity there. And yeah, that's why it's very important to also understand, like, how do Bitcoin L2s work? How do these Bitcoin meta protocols work? Which ones have been around the longest, right? Which ones will still be around? And that's why, you know, we chose to build on Stacks, because we think it's like, you know, the leading Bitcoin L2 right now, and it's going to be around for a very long time, and has currently the most a sensible security profile, right? So I think that's like a very important thing for everyone to understand.
If I can just pick up on that, I think an additional risk that we might see in the next 5 years or so, there's so many derivative assets of Bitcoin coming online, right? We have SBTC, TBTC, WBTC, XBTC, I don't know what BTC, they all have their prefixes. And at some point, an end user is going to be really confused what is what. And so it's up to us, I think all of us here, to educate people too why something like SBTC is what we call trust minimized and how it works and why we can trust it ultimately if more signers come online and on stacks, right? And they all start securing the network and backing SBTC. That's pretty important to differentiate from something like RABBTC, which has a single custodian. But those risks are very opaque. They're not clear to end users. And it's, like I said, I don't know, for instance, Acre, how you guys are you on layer 1 or layer 2 too? But I think that's pretty important just generally for,
Definitely.
For people.
Yeah, I mean, for us at Acre, we're bridge agnostic and Bitcoin L2 agnostic. Ultimately, we're focused on user experience side. That's really where we think a lot of innovation needs to be made in the space. To start, we're using a decentralized bridge called TBTC. Which a lot of the core team that is behind Acre on the engineering side is also the original builders of TBTC. It's one of the most decentralized Bitcoin bridges out there, operated by Threshold Network. But as more Bitcoin bridges come to market, like SBTC, for example, Acre is certainly open to plugging into those.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love TBTC, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I actually think the biggest risk that many users actually face is that I think what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months is there's going to be 100 Bitcoin L2s that come to market. There's going to be about 20 that actually build something half usable, of which 5 will actually win. And I think the biggest risk that users have, and it's probably our duty of care, to be honest with you, is that making sure that they actually have Bitcoin finality. Because right now it's currently the movement to build something on Bitcoin, and there's lots of L2s building on Bitcoin. And at the moment, they don't actually have Bitcoin finality. So I think this is kind of our duty of care as kind of builders within space, which is, okay, cool, I like the thesis, I like what you're building, but until there's Bitcoin finality, then it's still a shitcoin.
It's a good point. All right, real quick, if you're in the audience, listen up, because there's a question for you. People that are walking away from this, what's one thing that they should go do after this speech if they are at all interested in earning yield on Bitcoin?
Stake some Bitcoin with one of these lovely platforms here, or trade some Bitcoin on Velar. Acre, we just launched mainnet today and announced it. So we're live on acre.fi.
Beautiful. We're going to roll around, do some final comments. I want to give a big thank you to everybody that also came out to listen to us today. A huge thank you to this panel for sharing their knowledge. Let's roll through. Let's start with yourself, Peter. What would be some takeaways that you think, hey, if you are at all interested in this, go out into the world and do this. Here's my thoughts coming from the heart.
I think what we're going through right now is probably the biggest disruption within crypto in history. I think we've seen everyone try and fail and test and learn on all these different chains for the past decade or so. And I think people have now realized that Bitcoin is the future, is the most important asset. And I think the ETF approval kind of solidified the fact that Bitcoin will win. It's now a matter of kind of when rather than if. So I think the greatest thing we're seeing now is builders are actually coming to this space. They're putting in real time, real effort, real money into making this thing work. And I think if you're part of the community or you're a builder yourself, either A, start utilizing some of these protocols, try using our perp deck, which is on testnet, or start building yourself, building a protocol within here. There's some amazing support within the ecosystem, depending on kind of which layer you want to work with. Or always reach out to me, Visions BTC on Twitter, and I can happily connect you with anybody that will support you in an ecosystem. Because what the Bitcoin space needs right now is more builders that are passionate about making sure Bitcoin wins.
Beautiful. Tycho, any final comments from yourself?
Yeah, I think if you want to be part of this future of generating yield on Bitcoin and building on Bitcoin, head to zestprotocol.com, launch the app, and you can see Zest Protocol Earn. You can subscribe for the waitlist for early access, and then when the Bitcoin yield product is there, then we'll be happy to receive you.
Very nice, Brian.
I'll just say, I think we need more experimentation in the space. There's developer talent pouring in, certainly, but we need more mainstream experimentation as well. So don't be afraid to try these products. But one thing to keep in mind is if it sounds too good to be true, usually it is. So generally the yield is you just view it with the glass half empty sort of mindset maybe.
That's actually my favorite quote when it comes to yield. If you don't know where the yield is coming from, it's coming from you.
Yeah, you're the product. Yeah, exactly.
Well put. Philip?
Two things. I would say if you can buy the ETF, don't buy it. Buy spot BTC. It's always better.
There you go.
Great point.
And then second is if you have some idle stacks, stack them in stacking DAO. It's the safest source of yield on stacks today. So, and then use that. Use that in Arkadiko, Zest, Velar. There's other integrations that we have. So, yeah.
Really well put. This is so exciting for me to be able to moderate a panel like this because these guys have light years more knowledge than I do in this area. But I'm excited, right? I own Bitcoin. I want to see what the next level possibilities are. If you are like me and you want to continue learning, I encourage you to follow all these people on social media. If you like spaces, my company hosts spaces all day, every day, like 8 to 10 hours a day of spaces. We are just live all the time. We have a channel specifically dedicated to crypto called Wolf_Web3, and we host a Bitcoin mining space and a Bitcoin mantra space every single week. You can come and listen in. It's really been a huge pleasure moderating this panel and being able to talk with y'all. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.